So now as we talk about information processing and we talk about the reaction time component of it, it's important that we understand what reaction time is and how people are measuring it or researchers are measuring in the literature, right? So in reaction time is the time that it takes from an unanticipated, and that's going to be really important, is this idea of not having the ability to anticipate the stimulus to the beginning of the response. So that, remember, if we look back to the schematic of the information processing, that it's that ability when the stimulus is presented to the individual and when they initiate the beginning of the motor response. So this talks about how long they have the reaction time. Now, this temporal anticipation is when somebody anticipates the arrival, right? And so you see it in a lot of sports and a lot of things. It's that idea that we live life in this component of anticipation. When you're driving your car, when you're walking, you're anticipating the next move of something else. There way you can respond, right? And so that is the idea that in our everyday lives, we have the ability to do anticipation. But in the idea of research in the scientific world, the goal of this, if we really want to see how long it takes you to react to a stimulus, we have to remove that idea of anticipation from it. And so researchers do this in a couple different ways. They do these catch trials, which is when they change the protocol and they change the period of time from the stimuli or from a warning to when the stimuli is presented. And so that period is the for period, right? And so this for period, when the stimuli or a warning is presented and when the stimuli is presented, that's a period of a for period. It's a temporal component, so there's a time. And we'll talk more about that going forward. But these catch trials is when you either shorten or lengthen that for period so you can catch people off guard. Think about when you're at the start of a race and you said on your marks, you get up, and so that's the warning. And then when the gun goes off or the bell goes off, that's actually the beginning of the stimuli. And the for period is the time in between when you're getting your set versus when the sound goes off, right? Now, in this idea of reaction time, there's this component of how many choices the individual has to make. And that's the idea between simple reaction time versus choice reaction time. And a simple reaction time task is when you only have one option. When you see the green light on, press the button, right? Or when you see the hand go up, you go left. Or when you see the hand go up, you go right. So those are simple reaction time. Choice reaction is when I see the green light come on, I need to push a left, right, up, or down arrow depending on which location the green light comes on. Or if I have three lights, red, green, and yellow, I either need to push the M, the N, or the P related to each of those colors. So those are choices when I have the option to do multiple things. And I think about when I played defensive back, I would backpedal and the coach would either put the ball left, put the ball right, or bring it forward or push it back, right? And so there was four options, and whatever I had to respond to whatever the coach was doing during that process. So as we go forward, understand that when we talk about these trials, you need to understand these components. And if we look at the purpose for what reaction time is used in research, it's really more of understanding what happens in the central processing, right? So how long does it take us to take that stimuli, internalize it, go through our stimulus identification, our response selection, and response programming before we create the idea. So we have to remove ourselves from that anticipation. These are all a couple of tools and different tests that you would utilize. Over here on the right-hand side, these are some tools that you'll see sports reaction times. So this individual, each one of these things will light up, and he has to hit whichever number is lit up. The same with this is a soccer component down here in the bottom, and that is one of the components you can go. So depending on what ball lights up, the person has to kick it. So you're working on quick feet. And then this is more of a research trial over here, where the individual has, if you look on his hands, there are 5 dots on each of the hand, and depending on what light lights up in here, they need to go ahead and hit the correct response. So that is also, these are all forms of choice reaction time, right? Because there are multiple choices that the individual can make as they go forward. So it's a choice reaction time. Now, in the PowerPoint that I presented in BB Learn, you can actually go in and click these. These are all links to a couple websites that show how each of these works in different reaction times. And this is a little schematic here for you of what we're talking about and where reaction time comes into play. So let's go ahead and walk through this real quick. And so what I want to show you is this warning is that component of, and that's what this vertical line represents, right? So this vertical line going up and down is the warning, and that's when somebody would say, get your marks, or are you ready? And then there's some period of time. So as we go from here, so think about this as a time zero or time naught, or when the whole process starts. And then as we work right from left to right, time is the component, or the temporal component, it increases. So going left to right. And one of the important things to remember with this is really time is done in milliseconds. So this is a very small period of time that's happening with our system. For our purpose for this class is we don't really need to worry about EMG, and I'll tell you what EMG is going to be used for, but that we're not going to do much with that in this class. But so this 4 period, it represents the time in milliseconds that is between the warning and the stimulus presented itself. So this is the 4 period, and when we talked about those catch trials, the catch trials are a manipulation of this 4 period going through. And then there's the stimulus is presented. And from the time the stimulus is presented until you begin your motor response, till you begin to move, that's your reaction time. And that's what this RT stands for, is reaction time. Okay, now you have a premotor and a motor, and these are different components within the system. But for our purposes, we're going to just think about it as purely reaction time. And so from when the stimulus is presented to when the motor response begins, that's reaction time. Okay, now this MT stands for motor time, and what that is when I begin my movement, and that's where you see this muscle activity. This is EMG, so it's not EEG, it's not brain waves, it's actually in the peripheral motor units in measuring the activity level of the muscle. But MT here is motor time, and that's from when your response begins to when you've completed the task, response ends. So you have reaction time and motor time. And then you have a thing called the response time. And the response time, and we'll do that as RES, is simply equal to the reaction time plus the motor time. So the total period it takes you to complete the task after the stimulus is presented, right? So reaction time is the internal processing, and then motor time is how long it takes you to complete that motor output. And this is just going through and talking a little bit more about them as we go through, and a little bit definition of each one of those. So reaction time, movement time, and response time.